Welcome to T&T Episode 14, The Chronicles of Narnia, Book 7. I am so sad. This is our last Chronicles of Narnia.
And I have a cold.
We're so glad you're with us. We've pulled ourselves together. We're okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have the final book in the C.S. I'm trying not to get choked up. The final book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. It is definitely
book 7. There's no way I can possibly argue that.
All the different ways of ordering it agree. Even
This
Taylor
is
agrees
the 7th
that
book.
this is the 7th book, chronologically, historically, providentially, exponentially, book 7. The last battle, and by the picture on the front here you can see how gripping this story is.
Mm.
Yes, and also of course in our official Narnia chronology, it's the last one, and you can see some of the things that are illustrated from this book. So let's talk about the plot. What actually happens in this story? Well, very different than the other stories. We have in this story a false Aslan that's made by an ape whose name is Shift, and he coaxes this donkey named Puzzle into putting on a dead lion skin outfit, and posing as Aslan.
Because the ape is greedy.
The ape is greedy. And the ape is evil, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond greedy. It's an evil ape, and he teams up with a cat
And a bunch of Calormans.
and Calormans. And
you remember them from Horse and His Boy?
This
If you
is-
don't, then
this-
go back and watch that video.
yes, please do. Watch all the videos, actually. You'll see links
Right.
at the end of this to help you do that. And these evil collaborators start a rebellion. And the interesting thing is they actually lead this rebellion in Narnia by telling people that Aslan is the one giving them orders.
Say, Aslan's come again, and we're doing everything that he says, and of course, they're telling people to do stuff that doesn't seem right, but they're saying, oh, Aslan's tired of you all acting like you're so special, and he's decided to really put his foot down, and everybody pretty much believes it.
Yes, they pretty much do, because they want Aslan to be back. They're hopeful that he's appeared, but he is acting awfully mean, and they never get to see him except at night. And one of the interesting things is that this group of people leading the rebellion and getting all the Narnians on their side, they put the donkey in the in the lion skin in a stable and say that he's Aslan. So they are meeting at midnight in front of this bonfire, and they're getting the Narnians to do all these things, and they actually have the fake Aslan come out and
Walks around the bonfire once, and then goes back in.
yeah, and so that kind of reinforces this belief that, oh, I guess he has come, because they can't quite see him, but they think it's him.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that the King of Narnia, the true King of Narnia, finds out about all of this, and he, along with Eustace and Jill, who've been brought over from England.
We originally think that they're still in the same time of the silver chair and are kind of shocked to find out that so much time has gone by, because a lot of time
As
has
always.
gone by.
They're always
Several
shocked when
hundred
that
years.
happens. So they all help gather people on the true Aslan side to try to fight against this rebellion and overtake them. And in the end, people are fighting and being thrown into the stable. And when they're thrown into the stable, the bad guys just think at first that, nothing's really in there, other than this person they put in there to purposely kill people. But they find out that something weird is going on, and they see like a bright light and weird things happening. The evil cat goes in there at one point and comes out scared to death, and just bad things are happening when people are getting thrown in the stable. But Tyrion and everybody really from Narnia ends up going in the stable
One way or another.
one way or another. And we're kind of skipping over a lot. And they observe from inside the stable a whole different world, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful.
It's
And
a world within a world within a world.
Yeah,
it's like
real-
Worldception.
Yeah, it's really like they passed through the threshold of death, is what you kind of find out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking back into Narnia through that door, and they find out that Narnia is coming to its end, and they watch time kind of speed by, and they see everything come to an end. And so that's really the story of the last battle.
An interesting thing you don't really see a lot of in the other books is the presence of another religion that's obviously a false religion. And in the other books you have mythological creatures and that kind of a thing, but this is really the only book where you see that there's Tash, who is mentioned by the Calormans in the past, but he's, before it could easily have just been chalked up to a myth of some kind, or there's obviously magical creatures, maybe it was just some thing based off something or some just really mean mythological creature, but he's really treated as a very sinister and powerful being of some sort, and he's worshipped by the Calormans.
Yep.
He's kind of similar to a lot of Hindu imagery of some of their monsters. The multi-armed bird god of death kind of looks Egyptian a little bit too. He mixed a couple different cultures for the Calorman culture, so it kind of makes sense. But
what's interesting is when the evil side is trying to promote their religion, they actually mix the worship of Aslan with the worship of Tash, and they call their false image Tashland.
So they realize the Narnians aren't going to go anywhere near Tash religion itself, so they just say that they're one and the same.
So the idea there is that evil will mix some truth in with a lie to convince people of something that is ultimately wrong, but that they wouldn't have bought into otherwise. And that's something we see even in the book of Revelation, which is talking about the end times, that there's going to be this false religion, and that the Antichrist is going to pose as the real Christ. So I think that there's some of that going on in this story. Another interesting thing, and I actually have a few points here that I want to talk about, are the different kinds of believers, you could say, or non-believers that are in this story. So I'm going to kind of go through these here. There's this one person, for example, who believes, he doesn't believe in Tash. He's a Calormene, but he pretends to believe in Tash. And when he is thrown into the stable, as we talked about before, they are surprised by what they see in there. He actually encounters that there actually is a Tash. Now,
he's the commander of the Calormans, and he's always just used Tash, the name of Tash, as a means to his end. He's always using it to kind of manipulate other people in one way or another, and he's not very happy when he comes face to face. Tash says, "You've called me into Narnia, now what do you have to say to me?" And then he's called, the Calormans called Tash's lawful prey by Peter, and Tash grabs him and runs away. So basically it's saying beyond death he does meet up with this God that he's worshipped. But I think it's interesting because C.S. Lewis isn't saying that this represents a god as in the true God. It's a false god, but it's really a demon. Another kind of a person represented is the Naturalist, who are kind of represented by this band of dwarves where they say, we're not for the people of Calormene, we're not for the Narnians, the dwarves are for themselves, the dwarves are for themselves, the dwarves are for the dwarves. Even when they're shown miracles by Aslan, they still they find some kind of natural explanation for it, which...
because some of the people in Narnia are like, well, can't you just prove to them that you're real? And so he starts doing things, and they reinterpret it as, oh, well, this food that we're eating, which he gives them a beautiful meal, they're inside the stable now, and they think it's all, like, really nasty food from the stable.
If you remember the bit of the interview kind of thing with Richard Dawkins we had in one of our videos a bit back, where he said even if a voice came out and said, I am God, he would assume that it was an alien of some kind. It's the same kind of mindset. It's
self-fulfilling. Naturalism is always going to produce naturalistic thinking. And so that's what happens with the dwarfs. They're naturalists. And even when Aslan shows himself, they can't see it. Another kind of person is a person who loses her faith. And this is represented by Susan, who, and this crushes people when they read the story.
And it's a pretty big source of contention for people calling C.S. Lewis sexist because they say that he's glorifying masculine traits and demeaning feminine traits and saying that you have to be masculine if you want to be
Christian.
Spiritual and Christian. And
Not at all
what
what he's saying. And you can read it for yourself and see exactly what he says. In other books, we see that Susan really does love Aslan. Mm-hmm. She's there when he's killed and is really broken about it. But in this book, interestingly, she ends up turning away. And she actually kind of makes fun of her siblings that, oh, you guys are always bringing up those games we used to play. And to her, basically religion is just something for children, is kind of what...
She can really, the description of her is that she's gone on to put things that are actually really silly above things that are not just feminine things, but she's obsessed with just staying...
Her image.
Her image.
Yeah. Wanting to be grown up beyond fairy tales, beyond childlike
and then
things.
wanting to stay there as long as she can.
And never wanting to go beyond that and, avoiding death, basically, I guess. But
I almost wonder if they're kind of trying to play that up a little bit in the Walden Media movies. I don't know exactly how far they plan to go.
Are you excited that the Walden Media movie is going to make a last battle?
Yeah. Can only imagine what that's going to be like. But she's really... They've kind of played that up a bit with her so far.
Yeah, that there's something about her character that is a little bit, maybe insinuating a lack of faithfulness on her part. So it's just an interesting thing. What it brings up theologically, though, and this is my point, is this idea of someone who can profess to be a follower of Jesus and then down the road end up losing their faith. And Christians do have different takes on that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in this book that are somewhat controversial.
Yeah, definitely. Which leads to the next one. I'll go ahead and say this one, and that's the person who basically is accepted by Aslan, even though they were a worshiper of Tash. And this was Emeth, or Emeth. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Calorman, who everybody, whenever he's talked about in the book, everybody always thinks, oh, this is a real good guy. He's shown as very honorable and noble. And
he seems noble.
He goes in by his own free will into
the stable.
When they're talking about using the stable to punish people, because he says that if Tash is really in there, then why would he want to be living out here when he could go and face Tash, who he's worshipped all his life, in there? And so he goes in, and then he later speaks to Aslan about how he's seeked out Tash his whole life and wished to serve him and this and that, and Aslan tells him that because he worshipped Tash in a good, noble manner, that he was really
when you've done good things and when you've done good things in Tash's name, I considered it to be in my name, kind of, so to speak. And then the opposite, he said, when people do bad things in my name, Aslan says, it's considered to be for Tash.
And that's kind of, I think, showing a kind of...
Universal... Well, not exactly universalism.
There's a big theological question that people love to ask, like...
What about the people who haven't heard or have been taught differently? And Lewis is indicating that if you were taught the wrong way, but you had the right heart in pursuing the truth and in doing what you knew to be right, then that's the way God's going to judge you. And you'll be accepted by...
Which is very controversial.
Yeah, definitely.
It kind of...
You want to read what the Bible has to say and what Jesus has to say and really compare with that. Definitely very controversial, even in Christian circles, as to would that really be what the Bible teaches. So it just shows you, C.S. Lewis, he had his own views, and he brings out a lot of the Bible. But some of it,
Chronicles of Narnia aren't the Bible.
No, they're not. And
regardless of what we might seem like we're saying,
no, it's
they're just books.
No, do not read these as definite, wholehearted scriptural truth. Yeah. Another interesting thing that comes out in this book is that they talk about the inside of the stable being a lot bigger than the outside, and how surprised they are that this inside the stable is a whole universe. And Lucy...
Remember that it's kind of that this whole world almost seems to exist inside a wardrobe anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a
seems
stable inside a world. So it's worldception. It's worlds within worlds within worlds.
But Lucy, she's there with them in the afterlife, and Lucy says, "Well, this is like how in our world there was something contained in a stable that was, I forget exactly how she put it, but it was far bigger than anything that the universe could contain."
Mm-hmm.
And so, pointing there to that, a stable had been used in the history of Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and that it was
pretty obvious.
I think, a little tie-in there. And so, just one way, C.S. Lewis again reinforces the story of Aslan with the story of Christ. Also, the imagery of the end of the world is brought out in this book. They actually see stars falling, they see the moon turning red, and the sun getting really big and red. And I wanted to read something from the book of Revelation that ties in with this as well. "I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind." So again, this is where C.S. Lewis is definitely, I'd say correctly, drawing from the Bible more directly, and he's showing how everything in Narnia comes to an end. Their world really just comes to an end. However, what's really neat, what's cool about this is the turnaround. They find out they're kind of mourning the loss of Narnia, but they find out that as they enter this new world, that it is Narnia, but it's the real Narnia. And so this brings out the concept that heaven is the real place, and the world is just a copy,
Mm-hmm.
a shadow of what is real.
And as they go further in, there's layers and layers that are bigger than the last one. Is confusing as that is to try to imagine, and they find that their world is a part of this whole. It's all part of the big picture.
Even England's there, and maybe America's in heaven too.
Maybe.
We could hope.
Depends on C.S. Lewis's views on America.
Yeah. I think he was okay with us. He wrote to American children, so but maybe he was hoping they'd come to England. But anyway, basically anything good from any world was incorporated into this new world, and it was the real place. And it's interesting. The one of the animals, I think it's an eagle, actually talks about this idea of a copy and the idea of real, and how it's in Plato. Like it's actually mentioned. Do you remember that? It's actually mentioned. He goes, "You would have heard about this from Plato. How come people don't know these things?" So C.S. Lewis is really showing right there his, he's really showing this idea of drawing in philosophy, and particularly Platonic philosophy, the idea of our world being a copy of reality, being an echo of reality.
The shadow in the cave.
Yeah, so that comes out in this book. And I love the way the book ends. I thought I would read the ending of this book. "And as he," which is Aslan, "spoke, he no longer looked to them like a lion. But the things that began to happen after that were so great and beautiful that I cannot write them. And for us, this is the end of all the stories. And we can most truly say that they all lived happily ever after. But for them, it was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in this world and all their adventures in Narnia had only been the cover and the title page. Now at last they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, in which every chapter is better than the one before." So I guess it's not really the last story after all.
We just can't read it.
That
We
was
can't
just
review it.
That was just
It'd take a long time to review.
That was just the title page of a story, and I could see what he's getting at there, that the idea, our life right now, according to the Christian worldview, is not really the whole show. It's just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the overture to what God ultimately is going to bring about and what he has in store. That's a pretty cool thing to think about. I like the way he describes it. You don't get much better than C.S. Lewis in descriptions of heaven. And one reason is because he shows that heaven is not just this ethereal place where we float
It's not
around
just a land in the clouds.
and do nothing. It's this wonderful, everything you enjoy here, you'll have there, except a ton better. He describes fruit. Like, when you've eaten fruit there, the sweetest strawberry you've had here is sour. And, you know, anything you have there just makes things here on Earth seem bland in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're tasting here is a taste of how awesome it's going to be in the new world. So, those are some really interesting teaching points from the last battle.
Over the course of reading this book, we've compiled a list wherein we note the general characteristics of each of the different animals that is encountered over the course of the story, and we thought that we'd share them with you, our faithful audience, for sticking with us so long, so that you too can learn to judge an entire species based on a hasty generalization when you encounter them.
Alright, the first one is that cats are evil and dogs are good.
Donkeys have low self-esteem.
Dwarfs are usually selfish.
Bears are dumb, but good.
Cats are evil.
Unicorns are like horses, but with bayonets.
Boars are boars, and they bore with their tusks.
Horses are good at getting killed easily.
Cats are evil.
Mice are good for getting horses. At least they tried.
And cats are evil.
Yes. We didn't have to tell you that, did we? Everybody knows that cats are evil.
Well, those are all generalizations that are actually found in the Chronicles of Narnia.
May they help
you can read
you
it for yourself.
in learning that cats are evil.
And
And
as
the
well
other
as the other
things as well as
descriptions.
the-
Yes, yes.
Those aren't as important, though.
Well, Taylor, I can't believe it. We actually have come to an end of reviewing all the Chronicles
I
of Narnia
know.
books.
Now we have to actually start thinking of stuff to do for videos.
Oh,
It's
wow.
so nice to just be lazy and read and
Yeah.
read
And read.
and
And
read
not have to think.
and not have to think.
Because we don't think when we read.
No.
We just read.
We let you do the thinking for us.
Yeah.
We tell you how to do it, but we let you do it.
That's right. And then we learn from you and then tell you what we've learned from you on these videos. So
it's
thank you.
a vicious cycle, really. We really probably should get these issues worked out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we thank you so much for watching these
Mhm.
reviews. And if you haven't seen our other Narnia reviews, you can go back through our channel and look at all the different views
Yep.
of the Chronicles of Narnia.
Set up a whole playlist so you can start at the beginning and go right through chronologically. You don't have to worry about which one makes sense. It's just all there in a list for you.
Well, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again.
Subscribe, spread the word, and see you next time.